Good morning and welcome to our platform. This is Sisters in Higher Education. My name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm an associate professor over at Tarleton State University, and I'm really glad that you're here with us today. Before we get started, I'm going to share a few things about Sisters in Higher Education for our new viewers. I love that as we have new speakers, we have new viewers. The first thing I want to share is our website is www.sistersinhighereducation.com, excuse me, sistersinhighered.com. Also, I want to invite you all to join us on all of our social media platforms, or at least one, over on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even on LinkedIn, we have a group. Today, I have a guest speaker here that's going to share a professional development tip with us. We call them SIHE tips, and we invite someone out every month to speak with us. We did not have our February meeting, so this is our makeup that we're going to share with you all because it's such great content that we want to share. So I'm going to ask my friend, my sister, to introduce herself, and then we're going to jump into our topic.
Well, hello everyone. My name is LaShondra Randolph. I serve as the Campus Life and Leadership Coordinator at Metropolitan Community College in Kansas City, Missouri. I am a daughter, I am a auntie, and I'm also a plant mom. So I'm the pandemic plant mom that you all talk about or people were saying. Beyond that, I love doing service to the community. I'm affiliated with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Service is definitely in our heart, and so that's obviously why I made the choice that I've made. Beyond that, I love public speaking, and I'm always working to change the narrative. That's a mantra that I have. So,
Love it.
I grew up, it's a city called Harvey, Illinois, and so people from Chicago, when they hear Harvey, they go, "Ooh, like, are you safe?" And so I didn't like that, right? And
Uh-huh.
I always wanted to be mindful of like what people thought about my city and where I grew up, and I wanted to change that narrative. And I thought it was really imperative for people to understand that, if you come from what people kind of deem as the hood,
Mhm.
they always kind of downplay us and they make it seem like we can't be successful, we won't amount to anything in life. And so my mantra, even in the field of higher ed, working with students, has been to change the narrative to ensure that nobody would ever feel like I felt. But then also we can go against what people think about us and ensure that their words don't define who we are.
Yes.
That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. That is amazing. I like that. I'm one of those people that as soon as I hear something negative about something I'm connected to, I'm like busting my butt to show like, no. So I like that. That's right on track with how I am as well. Today, our topic is on the backs of Black women. I invited you here to have this discussion with me. I wanted us to bring out some things that have happened, are happened, and ways that we can move forward. I know that this is a topic that you and one of your friends are very dear. It's very dear to you all. So I wondered if you could share sort of like the meaning or perspective on the backs of Black women.
Sure. So myself and Dr. Kimberly Johnson, we have been working in the field for well over a decade. And one of the things that we noticed is that when it came to Black women in higher ed, there was a lot of things that we did that was beyond our job description. There's a lot of things that get piled on us. And so we wanted to really raise awareness about it. So we started doing research and we learned about this term called front stage, backstage theory. And so, on the front stage, it could be whoever that person is, whoever gave you that brunt of that work, they're on the front stage. They get the recognition, they get all the accolades. But then on the backstage, you would see that the Black women were the inner workings of everything that was going on. And so from that, we decided, you know what, we want to present about this. And we want to be very, our intent was really to call it on the backs of Black women staff. And doing that, it's a jarring topic for some. When they see that, they're like, what does that mean?
Right.
But the reality is that when it comes to Black women, we always have to look the part, right? We have these expectations for ourselves: look the part, be polished, be mindful that you're representing the institution that you work with. there's no room for error. You can't really make mistakes. If you sneeze wrong, you're getting written up. But you can see somebody else on the other side and they can do a million and one things and nobody would bat an eye.
Right.
We always have to be seen as team oriented. And then also, we don't, it's always this feeling of like, you shouldn't get recognized. That's your job. I shouldn't have to tell you you're doing a good job. I mean, that's your job. There's no accolade for that. And we also have to display the strong sense of work ethic and lead by example. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's that work twice as hard theory that we always had to do. And there's this, it's almost like a double or a triple consciousness that we had to overcome the perceptions of racism, sexism, and classism. And so that's really what kind of got us to why we wanted to have that topic. Another thing that we talked about is just the clear boundaries between professional and personal relationships.
Okay.
And when it comes to that piece, there's this feeling we that we get kept out the loop. And
Mhm.
there are spaces that we're in and we don't really understand. And so that can lead into these feelings of race fatigue. Because again, I've worked in spaces where I've been the only Black person in the office. And so I understand that feeling of feeling to be the voice for the whole entire culture. When it comes to our students, if we're working with students who look like us, it could be other members might look at them as problematic, and then we tend to step in, and we go against those things. That is not in our job description, right? But we understand that when it comes to us and the work that we do, we want to make sure that people understand that even when it comes to students, other staff, or faculty, that we go against that. We have to serve as that advocate, and when we become that advocate, then all of a sudden we become the voice of all things diversity. We speak on behalf of the entire culture. And
Yes.
so we kind of balance this feeling of passion versus politics.
Uh-huh.
So we have to that and that's another layer, right, where we have to be very careful about how we communicate. Some people call it code switching. The way we talk in the workplace is not in the way we talk on the outside. So our dialect is a little bit more different because we want to make sure that people understand what we're saying. But that's a
A
you know
double edge. Yes.
that we
Yes.
make. But there's also this need for allies, so even we want to bring ourselves to the workplace, but there's also a space where you want to have allies.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, there's a space where you have to protect ego. And that ego is not necessarily your ego, it could be my supervisor's ego. And
Right.
so again, it's the passion versus politics. And that's a very hard space to be in when we think about that.
I agree, man. I appreciate so when you're saying all this, you're pulling at my heart tugs. I'm like, oh yeah, there's that. And there's that. The largest thing that jumped out for me is the boundaries, right? Because we're loyal. We were raised like that. Our grandmothers were loyal. Their grandmothers were loyal. Our mothers, just everyone. We just come from a lump of loyal folks. And I think that sometimes our loyalty may put us in spaces that we shouldn't be in, or we're going overboard. I recently started leading this diversity faculty group here on our campus. And one of my colleagues of color during our introduction says, we don't want to be the voice of everyone. We don't want to be the expert. We'd like to learn with everyone else. We don't want to be pulled into certain spaces where we're expected to just have all the information for all of the Black folks. So I love that you're mentioning that, but I'm hopeful that we can understand or give ourselves grace that we don't have to know. And it's okay to say, well, for me, for the Randolph family, for the Jones family, or from my perspective, rather than saying, talking about us as a whole. What is your perspective on that?
No, you're absolutely right. So when it comes to us being an advocate, and I always say when we become the advocate and we are the ones that speak out against things that are not right, then that in turn turns us into the voice. And so people always want to come to us, but people have to understand that we get tired too, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and there are moments where we just simply do not want to be the voice. We are exhausted. And
Yes.
I know I tell my colleagues like race battle fatigue is for real.
Mhm.
We really feel that. And the best example I can use is I remember when George Floyd, when that happened, and there was this rush of we need to do something, we need to
Uh-huh.
talk. And our team was split, two black women, two white women.
Mhm.
And the black women, I just remember us like we literally started weeping and we were like, we are tired
Yeah.
and we don't have anything to give. Like our cup is empty, and
Yes.
we want you all to carry that flag and see it through. We want to support and everything, but we are also trying to wrap our minds around what just happened.
And yes.
People who have kids, and seeing him call for his mom who had
Mhm.
passed away, like that was from even for me, not even as a mom, I was like that stuck with me to
Heartbreaking.
I'm like, he called for his mother.
Mhm.
I mean, like this is somebody's son.
Yeah.
And so for us, there's a space where you do want to do things, but there's also a space where it's okay to just say, you know what? I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to give, and I have to take a step back, you
Yeah.
to get recharged and stuff. It's okay for other people to pick up the flag
Uh-huh.
in that moment. We told our colleagues, you can't self-advocate yourself. You can't say, I'm an advocate, I'm for you all and all of that. Well, this was the time that we needed you to show it. And that's
Yes.
exactly what happened in that space. We were like, we need you all to carry this flag. We need you all to do this work. We can't always do the brunt of the work. But also keep in mind that there are going to be times that you have to be the voice.
Yes.
You're going to have to think about work, especially us working with students, working with staff, working with faculty. You always have to think about the best interests of all, right? So there
Uh-huh.
are these spaces for that, and that's okay. So I don't want people to feel like no, just say no to everything, all things, everything. That's not what we're saying. But we know when your cup is empty, like
Uh-huh.
it's okay to voice that. It's okay to take a step back and let somebody else pick up the flag.
So when you and I talked about this topic, I thought that it was important to bring to Sisters in Higher Education because we need these discussions. We
Mhm.
need to know that it's okay to step back. We need to know that it's okay to move forward. So during 2020, when everything happened, I went underground. Let me just be honest. I have guilt when you just said that. I was like, I'm not doing anything. And every email that I was getting about, can you talk? Can you do this? I was like, no, no, no. I was so firm. I'm sure my colleagues thought that Dr. Jones was having like some kind of crisis, but I was exhausted. I couldn't verbalize that because I didn't really know what was going on. I just know that I didn't want to talk and I didn't want to be the voice, and I'm not an expert and I'm hurting. However, I have a book that I wrote in 2019 called Diversity God's Way prior to George Floyd's killing that kind of presented me as an expert on the topic. So when folks are reaching out to me, there is a level that I need to share. There's some information I need to share, but I need to share that I was like, no, absolutely not. And truly, it wasn't until December 2020 that I felt like kind of convicted because I shut everything down, everyone down. And I just didn't want to talk because I needed to process my feelings and my thoughts, but I didn't know what was going on. But there are conversations with you, conversations with Dr. Johnson, conversations with other sisters that are in higher ed that validated that, yeah, we are exhausted.
Mhm.
But also, if we want people to understand and know some things, we do have to share some information as well. And I think that kind of goes back to balance. Like I initially started. How do you get that balance? Are we then leaning on our intuition? How do we know when it's okay? I guess I'm thinking.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So no, thank you for sharing that piece. So one of the things I remember Dr. Karen Dace used to always say is no is a complete sentence. And and that was the level of self-care I needed to hear for myself.
Okay.
I tend to be the person that's always, if you ask me, I'm like, yes, yes, I'll do everything. Like, let's support. I love everything and I want to help, 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 help.
Uh-huh.
But then there are moments where you get exhausted. And I often would ask myself, especially during that era of George Floyd, I'm like, what was it about this time that I was just like, I was just like you? Absolutely not. Like,
Mhm.
my no was a complete sentence. It was never a no, but during that time. And I did not want to talk about it. I was processing a lot. And I was always the go to, right? Like, and I think the thing that shook a lot of the foundation of what happens with us is that people just were so used to hearing that yes, they
Mhm.
used to coming to me for everything that when I said no, they kind of were like, we don't know what to do.
Yes.
I remember one of the staff members that was working on it started getting some really unkind emails, right? Just this is not what we go to school for. We don't
Ugh.
hear about this. I mean, it was very negative.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I'll be honest, when they called and they were crying about it, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, good, good. Because this is what we experience all the time.
Yes.
All don't see that. You all just show up at the event. Again, you show up to the front stage, and then you don't see what's happening in the backstage. So, it sounds horrible to say, but to be completely transparent, good. This is what we experience all the time. When it comes to finding that balance, I think it is an intuition thing. We know
Mhm.
we can handle. In that time, we couldn't handle it. We were just like, no,
Oh,
this is not for us to handle. This is for you all to see this through. And
yes.
you have to trust that gut. You know that there are going to be times that there are spaces where if these people see something through, the work will not get done. It will not advance our institution that we're at. It's not going to advance the mission. Wherever you're at, those are the spaces where you're kind of like, you know what? I'm going to have to go ahead and sit at this table.
Yeah.
Even sometimes when I'm a little tired, I need to sit at that table. But there are other times where and you're good, they can handle this.
Yes.
They
Yes.
can see this through, and you have to trust that. You have to let them see it through, however it shows up. Because I think another piece is we show up to tables because we don't want things to fail, but
Yeah.
we want it to look the way we want it to look. So
Mhm.
when you pass that torch, you have to trust that that person can see that piece and be able to get the rest and find the balance that you need.
Okay. So I have a big question here and
Ooh.
I want to see how you answer it. So we talked about it's okay to say no. We talked about it's okay to say yes. There are times when we need to say yes. Can you speak to the sister that says yes, the importance of not ridiculing her, making her feel bad? Because there are more messages now on social media that says, we're not the voice, we're not the expert, we're tired. I'm not seeing a lot that says, ask us if you want to know.
Mhm.
And that's kind of back to balance. So I don't want to make my sister that does say, I'm going to sit at this table. I don't want her to feel bad. I want her to feel supported. Do you
Mhm.
have a perspective on that thought?
Yes, I'm trying to remember what the quote is. So, Michelle Obama did this quote, and it was like, if it's something along the lines of like, if you don't use your power, the power in your voice, if you don't use your voice, give up your seat at the table. It's something along those lines.
Okay.
And so, for that sister, it's
Mhm.
it's completely okay if you have the energy, if you can sit at that table and you can use your voice, by all means, sister, use the power of your voice, right? Um,
Mhm.
because that's important. Because again, it can't be like we talked about earlier, it can't be no to everything. If it's no to everything, after a while, you lose your seat at that table. People will not come to you anymore. And it kind of might close the door where,
Mhm.
you see rooms and you're like, well, I don't see anybody that looks like me. Well,
Uh-huh.
if it's a lot of no's, of course not. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So you have to be mindful of that. But then also you shouldn't feel guilty. When you get to a table, there should be no guilt in that. You know that what you're doing is for the greater good.
Mhm.
Know that it will and that's the power that we have in who we are as a culture. Like we rarely do things just for ourselves. The work that we do is always for the greater good. I mean, that's why we have sisters in higher education, right? It's
That's right.
good. It's not just for self. And so, be at the table. Don't feel guilty about that, but always keep in mind that the work that you do is for the greater good.
Yes, I love that. I want to add a little point to it. I want to add to remember your motives. If your motives are pure, then you won't worry about what sister is saying. So I do want sisters to support those that decide to speak up. But just in case you don't have a group around you that are supporting, just remember your motive, why you decide to make this decision, and the impact that you hope to make. So know your why is what I'm saying there. Make sure that you're very familiar with it, that you're solid on it, that you can answer any questions about it, and don't allow anyone to make you feel guilty about choices that you're making, about things that you feel heavy on or deeply on or passionate about. And then in closing, I want to see if there are any more points that you'd like to make on this topic. I want to make sure that anyone listening to this, they can take some of the nuggets. You've shared so much information. I love the last thing you said. I used to be a person that when I'm disappointed about something or I don't understand, I just kind of shut down. And then I had a conversation with a wise woman that said, when you shut down or when you close things out, sometimes you close out good and bad. That's why you shouldn't close out, because there are some people that need to hear from you. Of course, there are some people that you don't want to hear from, but that moment that you close or you shut down, then there are some folks that are not able to draw from you. So as we close out our topic on the backs of Black women, I wonder if there are a few points that you'd like our sisters to take with them on this topic.
Sure. So, one of the things that I'll definitely leave with is just remember to fill your cup up, right? There are going to be times that you're at a table and there's nobody that looks like you, and you need to find a space to fill your cup. And so that could be, I know at one of my jobs, we call ourselves the sister circle, and we would come together and we would be able to talk and vent and say whatever it is we needed to say, just so we could, fill our cup back up, right? Because that's the thing. A lot of times, the work that we do, it can be really draining. And it's not draining because it's like, ooh, we don't like what we do. It's draining because we are giving a lot of ourselves, to, have the confidence and to erase any fear when we step at a table. I feel like I have like all these quotes running through my head. But one of the things, there's another quote that kind of talks along the lines of like, say what you need to say, even if your voice shakes. And that's a really powerful statement, because the thing is that when we use our voice, especially when we're speaking out against something, especially when we're doing something that's for the greater good, sometimes the voice will have a little shake, and that's okay. Let that voice shake on, because what you're putting out is what needs to be said. Be confident in that. But again, use your circle. Make sure that you are filling your cup in other areas, like joining Sisters in Higher Education.
Mhm.
This is a space where we can all come together and we talk about everything, right?
We do.
All kind of topics, and it's not always going to be topics like this, right? We can say, hey, I read a new book and let me tell you about it.
Yes, yes.
So there's so many different things, but that is another space where you can, recharge. um,
Right.
Thinking about informal gatherings. So,
Mhm.
some people like happy hour, some people don't. um,
Right.
but when outside opens up again, is what I tend to say a lot. you know where can you connect with people? Where can you get that? Where can you recharge?
Mhm.
Remember to take time for yourself. Always understand that no is a complete sentence. You
Yes.
have to do what's best for you,
Yeah.
and trust your gut. I feel like those are the main ones that I can think about. But, you know, all in all, the work that we do is great work.
Yes.
And yes, a lot of things get put on our backs. Yes, we do get a lot of the brunt of the work. Yes, sometimes there's the people put all the work on us and they go to the front stage and we go to the backstage. But there are going to be spaces, especially in today's time, where we are starting to emerge and go up to the front of the stage. And people are starting to see the work that we do. And I always tell people the work that we do is not always for the accolade. It's always good to have, but we don't do it for the accolade. But the thing that I'm noticing now, especially with this surge of like everybody just now getting their very first, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion
Right.
director and all of that,
Right.
we're starting to emerge to the front and people are starting to see the work that we do.
Yes.
It's also okay to say the work that you did. It's all right to toot your horn a little bit.
That's right.
Sometimes we don't like doing that because it's like, oh, well, I don't want to seem like I'm bragging. But we
Uh-huh.
see others around us and they are bragging on the most mediocre things that they've ever done. And we are doing stellar things. So toot your horn as well.
Absolutely. I love it. You know, I love our sisters tooting their horn. On our Instagram page, we have Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, we feature our sisters. So I'm going to encourage any of our new followers to please submit your bio and a profile picture so that we can circulate you on our social media and all of the great things that you're doing at your institution and in your community. I think it's important. For some reason, we don't like to toot our own horn. We do well behind the scenes. But I want you to know that everything happens in its perfect timing. We've spent years of asking to be out in front, to be highlighted for the things that we're doing, and the time has come. That is why we have Sisters in Higher Education to help with professional and personal development. And so that we're not having to code switch as much to identify certain parts of ourselves that we can bring to our institutions that folks will value us for. So I'd like for you all to lock in. Again, I announced our website earlier, www.sistersinhighereducation.com or sistersinhighered.com. Yikes, I keep saying that. We do have our symposium that's coming in April. Please lock in. And we have a phenomenal membership, a virtual membership online with sisters from various areas. And every fourth Wednesday, we have our Soulspiration where we can come out and talk about things kind of like a process group. We talk about whatever. Someone talked about it as a Wusa group. And so we just have that opportunity to talk about things and to feel better to start the following year. So look into joining our membership, stay locked into our social media, and make sure that you're sending in your bios and your profile pictures so that we can highlight and celebrate you all. Have a fantastic day from Sisters in Higher Education. Thank you so much for being here again and sharing about On the Backs of Black Women. Phenomenal topic. And I'm wishing you a good day as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.